Okay, so you were in Lone Survivor.
Yes, sir.
But before you tell the story, so when I was finishing high school, going into play college ball, so it was like kind of the end of my senior year, all my senior year into that summer before I went up to school, and but I didn't, after I went to school and then I served a mission for my church, like I hadn't talked to you in a while until you came to our wedding, basically, with your kids. But I mean, we'd kept in touch a little bit, but I didn't really know what you were doing. So I had heard that you were in Lone Survivor. And so Sarah and I, we watched Lone Survivor. We like watched it on video, right, to like eliminate all the whatever that we didn't want to watch.
Yeah, which is a lot.
Which is a lot, dude, right? It's a lot. So that's kind of just one of our things we do. But I was like, oh, I heard Rich was in this. So I look you up on like IMDb, whatever, right? And like, oh, Rich was an extra in Lone Survivor. How cool. So this whole time I'm thinking like, that's so sweet. Rich was an extra in Lone Survivor. Turns out you were like the main stuntman, one of the main stuntmen in Lone Survivor.
Yep, shot the rocket launcher, the RPG.
Were you the main stuntman? Or one
I don't
of
know
them?
if you would say main stuntman, but I would say Lone Survivor, looking back now that I know how a film set works, I would say I was one of the core group of stuntmen.
Cool.
However, Lone Survivor was just a totally different movie, ran a totally different way. Peter Burgh is an amazing director. Marcus Luttrell was there on a consistent basis. What I'm getting at is these guys really ran the show the way they wanted to run it.
And that's
nobody told them.
Heard recently, I know you and I talked about this a little bit, but that movie's acclaimed for being one of the greatest like stunt movies ever made, basically.
Yeah.
And maybe that's wrong, but that's what I've heard.
And you know what? That movie,
it was just funny for me to find out that it was like, I was like, oh, that's so cute. You know? And then I'm like, no, Rich is big time, bro. What happened? Like, what?
Yeah.
Well, you always were, but like, it was cool to find out you were actually into that world, but like how deep you were into Hollywood, and like how really truly amazing that it was that you were that role in Lone Survivor.
Yeah, and there's a huge story with that you know, this is how I got into acting, and how I got into stunt work, and how I got into stunt coordinating was through Lone Survivor.
Yeah.
I had done a small movie a couple months before that.
Okay.
Oddly, Diego Baca, the strength and conditioning coach, had kind of hooked me up with a producer who was like, hey, would Rich be interested in doing this
Were
small
they
gig?
looking for like fighters, or
They
what?
were looking for what's
Just
called
athletes
like
that could like control their body well, or something?
No, they were looking for what's called like a fight advisor. A fight advisor is more kind of like a person on set who's like, you have stunt fighting for like a movie, big loopy punches. You got to really make things dramatic, right?
Okay.
Like for instance, if I were to do a fall in real life, I probably wouldn't flail my arms and kick my feet up when I was going over, but in a movie I might do that, right?
Sure, yeah.
So I was the guy who's what's called a fight advisor. So I told him what was real jiu-jitsu but wise. And you know what? It didn't interest me. I said,
Interesting.
They called me and I said, thanks, but no thanks. My wife came home that day and she's like, I from work, and I told her, hey, these guys, Diego set me up with these guys, and I told them no thanks. She said, why? And I said, well, it didn't sound interesting, and they wanted me to work Saturday, Sunday. I figured you wouldn't want me to do that. And she sat there and she was like, you know what? I think you should have done it. And I was like, really? Why? And I felt like there was many reasons I said no. One, it was Saturday, Sunday. We don't really work on Sundays. My wife's a PA, so she does work on call sometimes. But anyhow, I had felt like I know my attitude, and I know when I do something, it's 100%, right?
Yeah.
So I half kind of felt like I don't know if now's the time to dabble in other things, because it's going to take my focus, and I'm going to go hard.
You were fighting at the time.
And I was fighting at the time.
And were you on the Olympic team at that point?
I don't know what I had recently won. I don't know if I was yet, but yeah, I won a tournament that was in preparation for jiu-jitsu, being part of Team USA Judo Jiu-Jitsu, which actually ended up never going as far as it would like due to rules. And
sure.
Anyhow, hopefully in the future we'll see jiu-jitsu in the Olympics, because that would be fun.
Yeah.
So my wife was like, yeah, you should have done it. I think I would have supported you in that. People like want to do that for a career. And I was like, I'd never really heard that, but okay. And it just so happened that that production called me back, and they were like, hey, what if we even give you a small role in the movie?
Okay. You're like, all right.
And I said, okay, sure. So I went and done it, and I remember the first day on set, they were like, I didn't know that on movie sets, similar to probably similar. I relate it to high school because it's really kind of groups, right? Stunt guys kind of stay together.
Sure.
And you've seen it now, right? Like the stunt guys sit together.
It is
directors kind of sit together. Extras, they're not even allowed in the same area.
Well, I didn't even realize on this last. I didn't even realize that there were extras there. I was like, oh, I thought there were going to be extras here until like 1 a.m. and then all the extras are like, oh, where'd they come from?
You see what I'm saying?
Well, and then I ate at the wrong tent. I ate at the extras tent.
Then you ate with the extras, right? So like, there's all these rules. You don't really do this stuff. So when I got on set, I was excited to work. I know when I show up, I'm ready to work. I'm not sitting around like, who can I teach this to? And it had somehow turned out that the person they wanted to use didn't work out, had gotten fired, or I didn't know the whole backstory, but they'd asked me if I'd wanted to be for more in it, right? And I said, sure, like make me an offer. And sure enough, the writer and the director kind of wrote some things out, and they came back to me and they proposed it, and I said, absolutely, let's do it.
Okay.
And that kind of worked out because with the groups, when I was on set, I don't really watch a lot of movies now, and I really didn't then. So I was working with one of the main actors in the show.
Really?
Showing him jujitsu when, technically speaking, I really wasn't even supposed to be talking to this guy, right?
Really?
And that was Stephen Michael Quesada. He's a big character in Breaking Bad, if you've ever seen that.
Okay.
He plays one of the main detective's
Oh,
brother.
he's
Gomez, I think, is his name.
Gomez, yeah. He's his partner, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Gomez. I love Breaking Bad, obviously.
So it was him. I was working with him. And then from there on, we'd finished that show, and about, I think it must have been a month later, somebody called me up and said, hey, we're doing casting for Lone Survivor. We want to know if you're interested in doing it. And I was like, well, tell me about it. And they said, oh, you come to, it's called an open casting. You come in and, there's a line and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you read these lines. And I was blown away, like at an audition. I'd never really heard that term. But I was blown away that, like, you want me to audition? Like, shouldn't I be auditioning you to see if I want to work for you? Kind of feel right?
That's how I feel with my job a lot.
Yeah, so I truly was like, thanks, but no thanks, man. Like, I'm good. Like, I'm not doing that.
Just like not understanding or having been a part of the world.
I had no idea what that even meant, right? But
Sure.
I knew I didn't want to do it. And the girl was like, oh, really? I'm like, yeah, really? She's like, well, I'll tell you what. It's an open casting. If you show up, I'll put your name on the list. You could come to the front of the line and come in and do your audition. And I was like, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. Hung up, and same scenario. My wife comes home. Tell her what happened in the day. And she's like, Rich, no, you really should do this. Like, why wouldn't you do that? That's normal business in the acting world. And she convinced me to do it. Huh. So I drove down, went and did it, and went to the front, came in, and the gal called me in, and she looked at me and said, hey, you're hired. Like, we'll use you for an extra in this movie. And I said, great. I said, okay, we're sending you to Albuquerque, do a couple more things, grow your hair, grow your beard out. Okay. This was a basic extra role, probably something like a SAE extra, which is like a special ability extra. And I was like, cool, yeah, I can do that. Anyhow, there was a little bit more backstory, because I'm going to give you a backstory of how I really got into Hollywood, right? Because this was kind of my steps. So what had happened is, my first day on set, I see a guy on set that I know who's one of my jiu-jitsu students. So I showed up, I went through hair and makeup, got in costume, and on set I'm walking and I see a guy named Khalik. Okay, and he works in craft services, and he also does stunts as well. But he's kind of like a caterer to the stars on set, right? He was the specific one that Mark Wahlberg and Peter Burgh went to eat from.
Okay.
And they were a different scenario because they ate with everybody, totally cool people. Anyhow, I see this guy Khalik, and this guy Khalik probably for 3 years had told me that I should get into acting or get into stunts. And I'd listened to him a little bit here and there, but I'd never really taken him up on it. But he had for years told me. He was my jiu-jitsu students for years. I would say maybe 8 years or something before, right?
Really?
And he's kind of looking at me a little bit dumbfounded though, and I wasn't sure why. But anyhow, all of a sudden we start talking jiu-jitsu, blah, blah, blah. At this time I had just opened up my own gym, okay? So we're talking jiu-jitsu, talking stuff going on, and he was my student at Greg Jackson's, right? And Peter Burgh happened to walk by, who at the time, I don't even know who this is, right? I don't watch movies.
Because you don't watch movies, yeah.
So Peter Burgh walks by, and I see him stop, and he comes up to me and Khalik, and this meant nothing to me because I don't know who this is, right? And he looks at Kalik and he asks Kalik, hey, did you call your friend? And Kalik really I'd never seen this look in him before. He really was like, and he looked back at me and he looked back. And I was like, that's interesting. So little did I know, about a week before that, Mark Wahlberg and Peter Burgh had asked my friend Kalik if they knew of a gym they could train at, if he knew of a gym they could train at while they were in Albuquerque. And he said, yes, call Jackson's.
Okay.
They called Greg Jackson. Never returned their phone call.
No way.
He didn't return Peter Burgh or Mark Wahlberg's phone call, right? Okay, and now maybe they didn't make the phone call on their own. Maybe they had an assistant. But either way, they didn't return their phone call.
Okay.
So my friend Kalik had told him like 2 days before, let's try to call my friend Rich. I'll call my friend Rich. He just opened up a new gym. I bet he'd love to have you in.
Okay.
Kalik didn't call me. And now I'm standing in front of Kalik.
He's like, oh crap, I forgot to call you or something.
and Peter Burgh says, did you call your friend? And Kalik's like, well, he's right here. Like, this is him. And Pete's like, well, could we come train at your gym? And I very quickly was just like, you're welcome to come train at my gym anytime. I'm happy to let you in. I'm happy to come at any moment. However, I imagine you're busy. I said, I always have, what do you want to train? I always have my boxing gloves. I always have mitts on me. I'm happy to train you right here, right now, if you want to. And he was like, absolutely, we're doing that. So
was Mark Wahlberg with him?
He wasn't with him at that moment, but he walked over to the stunt coordinator named Keith Merriweather at that time and was like, hey, well, let's add Rich to like this group.
Interesting.
And that was a whole issue too, because I don't know that you're technically supposed to kind of do stuff like that to a stunt. Now that I'm a stunt coordinator, if somebody did that to me, I'd be like, what are you talking about, right?
Yeah.
So looking back, the stunt coordinator was amazing because he totally was like,
He's
all
just
right,
let it
come
happen.
on, yeah, you're with us now. And from that point, I stayed on set for several months working with. So then Peter Burgh would be like, later on he introduced me to Mark Wahlberg, but kind of the scenario would be was we're all filming. And every so often, Peter Burgh would say, time out, where's Rich?
No way.
And I would run to my backpack.
Did I hear you just call him Pete a few minutes ago? That's funny. You're like on nickname basis with one of the greatest like directors.
And I didn't even know this, right? I literally still didn't know who this guy was, right?
That's so funny, dude.
Still didn't know
That's
who
like
he
classic you, though.
Yeah, I just still didn't know, right? I want to compete with this guy is what I'm trying to do. I'm like trying to outwork him on the mix or something.
Dude.
So he would call, cut, where's Rich? And I always carried my backpack with me because I knew this might happen. I would run and grab my mitts and I would work him out. And then
Peter Burgh, you would?
Peter Burgh, in the middle of everything, and I would be all in my Taliban gear or in my
That's so funny,
like whatever gear I was in that day, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, Mark Wahlberg started to get a little interested. He's like, okay. Well, let me see what you can do. And he held mitts for me as well.
Yeah.
So then that's what we did, man. We worked out on set. I have pictures of me and Mark and me and Pete just working out in the middle any day that they felt like it.
So would you like warm Mark Wahlberg up before like big scenes or stuff like that? So that he was kind of like, I don't know, this is maybe naive to think about. It was like sweaty or like he was like actually in warm after taking a break for a second, or
I wasn't in the scenario enough to probably know that. I wasn't in the film world to know that.
Yeah.
That's a good question because perhaps that was part of it. But in the moment, I had no idea.
You just know they would be like,
cut,
where's Rich?
Yeah, I was just ready to work out. And like and I had really no stunt background other than fighting at that time. So my real transition into stunts was one day Peter Burgh was like, hey, we need somebody to shoot this rocket launcher, right? And I hear him talking to the stunt coordinator. And Pete was like, let's have Rich do it. And the stunt coordinator,
because he just liked you at that point.
Yeah, he just liked me at that point, right? I'll never forget it. That day, then the stunt coordinator comes up to me and he's like, and stunt coordinators are like, and especially in this show, are like, these guys are ex-military. They have Navy SEALs on set. Marcus Luttrell.
Did you live with Navy SEALs for a minute?
No,
you just spent a lot of time with them because they were on set.
Yes.
Yeah.
So then anyhow, so these guys know how to shoot weapons, right? These guys know what they're doing. So he's like, you know how to shoot a rocket launcher, right? And I remember, I'm like, there's no way I'm lying. I'm like, no, I do not know how to shoot a rocket launcher. have you ever shot a rocket launcher? No, I've never shot a rocket launcher, right? He's like, he looks at me, he's like, don't worry, we'll teach you.
And you've got Navy SEALs on set who shot, dude.
So I went and learned how to shoot a rocket launcher and shot the rocket launcher in Lone Survivor.
That's sick.
You know, and it was a real rocket launcher with like a blank on there that had all this wiring to trigger the bombs that go off, and like it's a whole setup, right?
After you shoot it, so it's actually like feels as if you shot one, and then they've got the
and then that was fun to learn about because they're like, here's the thing, it's gonna shoot, it's gonna sound like it shoots, it's going to shoot, the camera is gonna be directly behind me, but you need to do it exactly how we say and push it when we say, because that wall that Mark Wahlberg and Ollie Solomon are running out of is going to explode. However, real explosions would implode, it would go in. But that wall, on the other side of that wall, we have 100 little dynamites in there, or some TNT, and that wall has to explode. So we need it to blow out, because we want it on camera to do the opposite versus cave in.
Sure.
We want it to explode out. And they're going to run in there, and then they're going to run out. So if you push that early, they could be inside of this thing.
Because, so you triggering a rocket launcher, is tied to the explosion. Okay.
Yes.
Jeez.
And I'm just like,
and you've like never shot this.
And I've never done this. I've never been a stuntman before. Like, I'm just like, all right, let's go for it. And then to reshoot, we had to shoot it multiple times. And you would imagine, to shoot it multiple times, they got to rebuild that wall. And then we had a truck I shot after that as well. And
how many takes did you guys do that of the wall?
That I don't remember. Well, I would say probably 2 or 3. And then we had some truck scenes where I blow up the truck as well. But like, I just had no idea what I was doing, but I know I was willing to do it.
Yeah, sure.